Jonathan Mendonca watched the city from his office window on the top floor of the most imposing building in downtown Manhattan. 50 stories below, people looked like tiny specks, insignificant under the shadow of his empire. The sky was beginning to darken, and the city lights flickered on one by one, like artificial stars that could never outshine the glow of Mendonca Enterprises. His cell phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was Michael, his younger brother and the company's CFO. "John, I just closed the deal with the Chinese investors. $20 million. They signed everything without blinking." Jonathan smiled. That acquisition would solidify Mendonca Enterprises' presence in the Asian market. "Excellent work, Michael. They know who they're dealing with." "As always, brother, no one can resist an offer from Mendonca." It was true. In his 25 years in business, Jonathan had learned that everything, absolutely everything, had a price. You just had to find out what it was and have the means to pay it. "I'm going to celebrate with Kevin tonight. He'll be thrilled to know we're spending our summer vacation in Shanghai next year." "Ah, the Crown Prince," Michael chuckled. "How's my favorite nephew?" "As always, top of his class, captain of the swim team, and still finds time to play the cello like a pro." "You know how it is, Mendonca blood." The pride was palpable in his voice. Kevin, at 12 years old, was already showing the same determination and intelligence that had made Jonathan dominate the American real estate market. Before he could grab his suit jacket, his secretary rushed into the room. Her face was pale. "Mr. Mendonca, St. Thomas School just called. It's about Kevin." Something in her expression made his blood run cold. "What happened?" "There was an accident. They said he fell down the main staircase and—" Jonathan didn't wait for her to finish. In seconds, he was in the elevator. For the first time in years, he felt an emotion he had forgotten existed. Fear. A visceral fear that couldn't be controlled with money or power. When he arrived at the hospital, Kevin was already in the ER. The doctors were talking about severe head trauma, internal bleeding, coma. "I want the best specialists in the country here now," Jonathan demanded, his voice trembling. "I don't care what it costs." The hospital administrator nodded nervously. "We're doing everything we can, Mr. Mendonca, but his condition is extremely serious." As he watched his son, small and fragile, connected to tubes and monitors, Jonathan experienced an unfamiliar sensation. For the first time in his life, he found himself facing a problem that his money, his power, and his influence couldn't immediately solve. There, in that sterile and cold hospital room, Jonathan Mendonca, the man who had bought off judges, persuaded senators, and crushed competitors, felt utterly powerless. And the reality hit him with brutal force. His empire was worth absolutely nothing if he couldn't save the only person who truly mattered. The days dragged on with torturous slowness. Jonathan barely left the hospital, turning the ICU into an extension of his office. After 2 weeks without significant changes, Dr. Eric Hayes, a renowned neurosurgeon whom Jonathan had flown in from the Mayo Clinic specifically for the case, requested a private conversation. "Mr. Mendonca, we need to discuss the expectations for Kevin's recovery," the doctor said, with that diplomatic seriousness that only bearers of bad news can maintain. "His neurological condition hasn't shown the improvement we were hoping for. With each day that passes in this state, the chances of a full recovery diminish significantly." "And what does that mean in practical terms, Doctor?" "It means that we need to start considering palliative care strategies and—" "Don't even continue." Jonathan stood up abruptly. "My son will wake up. It's just a matter of finding the right treatment." The doctor sighed. "Mr. Mendonca, with all due respect for your pain, medicine has its limits." "How much?" he asked abruptly. "Excuse me? How much does it cost for you to keep trying? I'll double what I'm paying, triple it. Just don't ask me to give up." "Mr. Mendonca, it's not a matter of money. Not even all the resources in the world can guarantee a recovery when—" "Don't give me that crap." Jonathan slammed his fist on the table. There's always a way. There's always someone who knows what to do. It's just a matter of finding them and paying the price. I'm sorry, but it doesn't work that way when it comes to human life. The next morning, as he walked down the hall toward the cafeteria, Jonathan heard a commotion at the entrance to the ICU. A child was screaming, while security guards tried to restrain her. "I need to see the boy, please! I know I can help!" Jonathan approached, curious. It was a girl no more than 10 years old, too thin for her age, with disheveled black hair and simple worn clothes. Her eyes, however, shone with a disconcerting intensity. "What's going on here?" Jonathan asked the security guard who was holding the child's arm. "This girl has been trying to get into the ICU for 3 days, Mr. Mendonca. Says she needs to see your son." The girl, recognizing Jonathan, widened her eyes. "You're his father. Please, sir, I know I can help. I had a dream. I saw your son waking up after I prayed for him." Jonathan studied the child with distrust. In other times, he would have ordered her removed immediately. But despair had opened a crack in his skepticism. "What's your name?" he asked, bending down to get to the girl's level. "Sophia. Sophia Ribeiro." Her voice had a surprising conviction for someone so small. "And how do you know about my son?" "I saw it in the news. And then I had the dream. 3 times the same dream. Sister Agnes says that when God sends the same dream 3 times, it's because it's important." "Sister Agnes? She takes care of us at the shelter when we can get a spot. But she's sick now. She couldn't come with me." The businessman noticed the girl's dirty hands, her broken nails, her worn shoes. She was clearly a street child. "And what do you think you can do for my son?" Sophia looked at the security guard, then back at Jonathan. "I can pray for him. I can hold his hand and ask him to come back." "Let her in," he ordered the security guard, who looked confused. "Mr. Mendonca, the ICU rules are clear about visitors, especially unaccompanied children. I'm accompanying her. And as for the rules..." Jonathan adjusted his impeccable suit jacket. "Who do you think pays for this entire floor?" Instead of showing fear, as most children would, she simply nodded, as if confirming something she already knew. "Can I touch him?" Jonathan nodded. Sophia placed her small hand on Kevin's and closed her eyes. She began to murmur words that Jonathan couldn't fully understand. It seemed like a mixture of prayers and private conversations with Kevin. After a few minutes, when Jonathan was already starting to feel foolish for allowing this, one of the monitors emitted a different sound. The nurse on duty rushed into the room. "There's been a change in the brain patterns," she said, surprised. "There's more activity." And then it happened. Kevin's fingers moved slightly. A subtle movement, almost imperceptible, but definitely voluntary. The first in 2 weeks. "This isn't possible," murmured the doctor, checking Kevin's pupils with a small flashlight. "He's responding to stimuli. There are signs of consciousness returning." Jonathan turned his gaze to Sophia, who remained quietly in a corner. Their eyes met, and the girl simply shrugged, as if to say, "I told you so. Your son is strong. He wanted to come back. He just needed someone to show him the way." Jonathan sat down beside her, an impeccably dressed millionaire next to a street child. 2 worlds that should never have crossed paths. "How did you know? How is this possible?" Sophia shrugged again. "I just knew. Sometimes you know things, even without understanding how." "What can I do for you, Sophia?" "Anything. You just gave me back my son." The girl stared at him for a long moment, as if assessing his sincerity. Then she whispered, "You can help me save my brother too." Jonathan stared at Sophia in astonishment. "Your brother?" The girl nodded, her dark eyes suddenly becoming more serious. "His name is Miguel. He's 6 years old. He's very sick and no one wants to help us." "Where is he now?" "At Mrs. Eleanor's boarding house. It's not a good place, but it was the only one we could find after..." She hesitated. "After we lost our home." In the luxury car, Sophia looked out of place against the Italian leather seats. She gave directions to the driver, leading them further and further into the outskirts of the city, to areas that Jonathan knew only from real estate investment reports. Mrs. Eleanor's boarding house was an old and decaying brownstone. There, lying on a mattress on the floor, was a small boy, as pale as paper, with deep circles under his eyes. His breathing was noisy and labored. "Miguel," Sophia whispered, kneeling beside her brother. "I brought help." Jonathan felt a pang in his chest. The contrast between his son, surrounded by the best medical care that money could buy, and that child, abandoned to his fate, was too painful to ignore. "What's wrong with him?" he asked, kneeling too, not caring about his $10,000 suit touching the dirty floor. "It's his lungs," replied a gray-haired black woman. "Pneumonia, I think. It's been getting worse for weeks." Jonathan didn't hesitate. He picked up the boy in his arms, surprised at how light he was, as if he were made of paper. "I'm taking him to the hospital. Now." While the doctors cared for the boy, Jonathan turned his attention to Sophia. "Sophia, I need to understand your situation better. Where are your parents?" The girl's face hardened. "My father left before Miguel was born. My mother..." She took a deep breath. "She died 2 years ago. That's when we had to leave our house. And since then, you've been living on the streets. Sometimes we stay in shelters. Sometimes with Sister Agnes. Sometimes at the boarding house when we can get some money. I sell candy at the intersections. What happened to your mother, Sophia? How did she die?" The girl stared at him with a disconcerting intensity. "She got sick after we lost our house. She tried to fight the eviction. She went everywhere she could, but no one listened. She said it was unfair that we had a right. But the company lawyer said the law was on their side." Jonathan felt a chill run down his spine. "What company, Sophia?" "I don't remember the name exactly. It was big, important. My mother showed the papers with a big M on them." The floor seemed to disappear beneath Jonathan's feet. The Mendonca Enterprises logo was exactly like that. A large, stylized M that appeared on all official documents. "Hope Village," Sophia replied when he asked about the neighborhood. "It was a nice place, full of trees. There was a playground where I used to play. But then the bulldozers came. They tore everything down." Jonathan closed his eyes, feeling nauseous. Hope Village had been one of his biggest real estate projects 5 years ago. An entire community removed to make way for a luxury condo that was now worth billions. The following days were a whirlwind. Kevin had fully awakened and, to the astonishment of the doctors, showed no significant neurological aftereffects. Miguel responded well to treatment, although his case was more complex due to years of medical neglect. Jonathan divided his time between the 2 hospitals, while secretly launching an investigation into the Hope Village case. What he discovered left him devastated. The community had been illegally removed. The residents had a right to ownership through adverse possession, but documents were falsified, judges were bribed, and the entire process was expedited so that the project wouldn't suffer delays. And all of this had happened under his signature, with his implicit knowledge that obstacles would be removed at any cost. He was interrupted by a call from Michael. "John, Kevin's been asking about the girl. He says he saw her while he was in a coma." "Is that possible?" Jonathan felt a shiver. "What exactly did he say?" "That a girl with black hair helped him find his way back, that she held his hand in the dark." At the hospital, Kevin smiled when he saw his father. He was pale, but his eyes had their usual sparkle. "Dad, where's the girl who helped me? I want to thank her." Jonathan sat on the edge of the bed. "Kevin, how do you know about her? You were in a coma when she was here." The boy frowned, confused. "I saw her, Dad. I can't explain it. It was like I was lost in a dark place and she appeared with a light. She said I needed to come back, that you needed me." "There's one more thing," Kevin continued now in a low voice. Before the accident, I saw something in Uncle Michael's office. The businessman froze. What did you see, son? Uncle Michael got furious when he saw me in there. He said I shouldn't be messing with his stuff. And then, Kevin frowned as if trying to remember. I ran out. I was on the stairs and then I don't remember anything else. Kevin, this is very important. Did you fall down the stairs or... He couldn't finish the question. The boy's eyes filled with tears. I think I felt someone push me, Dad. I think that's why I fell. Jonathan's world collapsed like a house of cards. The possibility that his own brother could have tried to kill his son was so monstrous that his mind struggled to process it. Instead of confronting Michael immediately, Jonathan decided to investigate on his own. He used his contacts to access the school's security footage from the day of the accident. The hallway camera clearly showed Kevin hurrying out of the library, holding something that looked like a file. Seconds later, a familiar figure appeared in the same hallway. Michael. Why would Michael be at the school that day? Why hadn't he mentioned it at any point during Kevin's 2 weeks in a coma? The next piece of the puzzle came from the investigation into Hope Village. Jonathan secretly hired a private investigator to analyze the entire operation, and the report confirmed his worst suspicions. Mendonca Enterprises had been used to launder money from illicit sources with falsified documents and bribed judges. And on all the compromising documents, one signature was repeated, that of Michael Mendonca. It was Sophia, however, who provided the final piece. When Sister Agnes brought the documents that the girl's mother had kept, Jonathan found a record that his legal department had lost. Irrefutable proof that the residents of Hope Village had a legal right to the land. Even more disturbing, he found a letter written by Sophia's mother shortly before she died, detailing threats she had received when she tried to take the case to court. Threats signed by Mendonca Enterprises. "Your mother was brave," Jonathan commented, returning the documents to Sister Agnes, a frail woman with kind but determined eyes. "Martha fought until the end," the nun replied. "She always said that one day someone would hear the truth, that justice would come, even if it took a long time." Jonathan watched Sophia, who was playing with Miguel in the hospital garden. The boy was still weak, but improving every day. He had decided to transfer both children to the same hospital as Kevin, ensuring that they received the best possible treatment. "How did you know Martha?" "Our congregation offered assistance to the residents of Hope Village. When they were evicted, we tried to help as much as we could, but..." Sister Agnes sighed. "The system is cruel to the poor, Mr. Mendonca." Jonathan felt the weight of guilt crush his chest. "And the children's father?" "He abandoned Martha when he found out about the second pregnancy. Miguel never knew his father." Jonathan watched the children for a few more moments. He made a decision. "Sister Agnes, I'm going to take responsibility for Sophia and Miguel. I want to give them everything they lost because of me." The nun studied him with perceptive eyes. "You discovered something about your company, didn't you?" "I discovered that my empire was built on the suffering of innocent people, and that my own brother is responsible for it, and possibly for the attempted murder of my son." "What do you plan to do now?" "First, ensure the safety of the children. Then," Jonathan took a deep breath, "then confront my brother and dismantle the entire criminal operation, even if it means losing everything I've built." The nun nodded. "You're finally finding your way, Mr. Mendonca." Jonathan planned every detail meticulously. First, he transferred Kevin to a private suite in another hospital under a false name and with reinforced security. Sophia and Miguel were taken to the same wing, along with Sister Agnes. The next step was to gather all the evidence against Michael and the network of corruption that operated through Mendonca Enterprises. In 2 weeks, he had a complete dossier: offshore accounts, bribes to public officials, falsification of documents, and connections to high-ranking politicians. Did I really not know any of this? Jonathan wondered during sleepless nights. The answer, he realized with bitterness, was that he had chosen not to know. He had preferred to believe that his empire grew through merit and business acumen, closing his eyes to the questionable methods. The next day, Jonathan called an extraordinary meeting of the board of Mendonca Enterprises. He arrived earlier at the headquarters building, going straight to Michael's office. As he expected, his brother was already there. "John, what a surprise," Michael smiled. "I didn't expect to see you so early. How's Kevin?" "Improving," Jonathan replied, carefully observing his brother's reaction. "The doctors are impressed with his recovery." A nearly imperceptible shadow crossed Michael's face. "Great. Did he remember anything about the accident?" "Actually, yes. He remembered everything." The silence that followed was oppressive. Michael turned to the window, pretending to admire the view. It must have been traumatic for him. "Without a doubt," Jonathan circled the desk, approaching his brother, "especially the part where he saw compromising documents in your office, and the part where he was pushed down the stairs." Michael turned slowly. His face had lost all friendly expression, replaced by a cold and calculating mask. "So he told that absurd story?" "John," the boy hit his head. "He's confused. The school's security cameras show you there that day, Michael. You never mentioned it. Coincidence?" Jonathan laughed humorlessly. "How was it a coincidence that you assumed total financial control of the company 5 years ago? How was it a coincidence that Hope Village was illegally expropriated under your direct supervision?" Michael's smile disappeared completely. "I see you've been digging up the past. It's not healthy, brother. I found the girl, Michael, the daughter of Martha Ribeiro, the woman who tried to fight the illegal eviction and who died because of it. Strange how fate works, isn't it? Her daughter ended up saving my son, the son you tried to kill. I have proof of everything. The offshore accounts, the bribes, the falsifications." Jonathan threw a folder onto the table. "It's all here. Copies, of course. The originals are in safe places." For the first time, Michael seemed genuinely worried. "What do you intend to do with this?" "With enough funds to live comfortably, but far enough away to never be a threat again. And the company? I'll clean everything up, return what was stolen, compensate the victims. If anything's left after that, we'll rebuild from scratch. Legitimately this time." Michael smiled, a cold smile that never reached his eyes. "You've always been an idealist, John. That's why I needed to take real control of the business. Do you really think you can build an empire the size of ours playing by the rules? I'd rather have no empire at all than live off the misery of others." "Noble words," Michael scoffed, "but empty. You enjoyed the benefits all these years without asking inconvenient questions. Your conscience only woke up when your precious heir was threatened." The words hit Jonathan like a punch. There was truth in them, a painful truth he couldn't deny. "You're right," he admitted. "I was complicit by omission. That's why I now have a duty to fix everything." Jonathan locked the office door. "Ending this, now." He took a recording device from his pocket. "Our entire conversation is being recorded, including your implicit admission about Kevin. Unless you sign the confession I prepared, I'll hand everything over to the authorities. Today, you'd destroy yourself along with me, if necessary." The brothers stared at each other in tense silence. Finally, Michael walked to his desk and opened a drawer. "I always knew this day would come, John." He took something out of the drawer. "Unfortunately, I can't allow that." The metallic glint of the gun reflected the sunlight coming through the window. "Think carefully, Michael. Premeditated murder of your own brother, in your office. Even with all your money and influence, it would be hard to get away with that." The office door opened abruptly. Sophia entered, followed by 2 security guards that Jonathan had strategically positioned. "Mr. Mendonca, the driver said that you—" The girl's voice died when she saw the gun. "Sophia, get out of here!" Jonathan shouted, moving instinctively to protect her. "You," Michael exclaimed, recognizing the girl, "you were there that day." Sophia froze, her eyes fixed on Michael. "I saw you, on the stairs, pushing the boy." Jonathan felt his blood run cold. "What did you say, Sophia?" "I was at the school selling candy that day," the girl explained, trembling. "I saw everything through the window. The man pushed the boy. I tried to scream, but no one heard me." Michael pointed the gun at Sophia. "One more lie out of your filthy mouth, and it'll be the last thing you ever say, kid." "Put the gun down, Michael," Jonathan ordered, placing himself between his brother and the girl. "It's over." "No, brother. It's just begun." What happened next was too fast for Jonathan to fully process. Sophia ran forward, pleading, "Please, don't hurt him, please!" Michael, surprised by the sudden movement, stumbled backward. The gun went off accidentally. The deafening sound filled the room, followed by a scream of pain. Michael staggered back, a red stain quickly growing on his shoulder. The gun fell to the floor with a metallic thud. The security guards stormed into the room immediately, immobilizing Michael while Jonathan checked on Sophia, terrified that she might have been hit. "I'm okay," the girl whispered, clinging to his suit jacket. "I'm okay." Minutes later, the police arrived. Michael was taken to the hospital in police custody. The shot had been accidental. The bullet ricocheted off the desk and hit him in the shoulder, a painful but non-fatal wound. "Why did you come here today?" Jonathan asked Sophia later. "Kevin said you were going to confront your brother. I was worried. I had a bad dream." Jonathan smiled sadly. "It seems you have a habit of saving Mendonkas." Sophia shrugged, that characteristic gesture of hers. "I guess that's what I'm here for." That night, Jonathan made the most difficult, and at the same time the most liberating decision of his life. There would be no quiet deals, no cover-ups. The truth, however painful, needed to come to light. The fall of Mendonca Enterprises dominated the headlines for weeks. Real estate empire built on corruption. Billionaire accuses own brother of attempted homicide. Money laundering scheme involves politicians and judges. Jonathan handed over all the evidence to the authorities, including documents that incriminated him by omission. He waived immunity, willing to face the legal consequences of his negligence. To the surprise of many, Jonathan sold his personal properties, liquidated investments, and transferred most of his fortune to a fund to compensate the victims of the company's illegal ventures, especially the residents of Hope Village. The legal process would be long and complex. Michael faced serious charges, from corruption to attempted homicide. Meanwhile, Jonathan reorganized his life with a simplicity he had never imagined possible. "We need to talk about your future," Jonathan said to Sophia one afternoon in the hospital garden. Miguel was playing with Kevin a few feet away. Sophia watched the boys before answering. "Are we going back to Sister Agnes?" "Actually, I was thinking, if you want to, of course, about legally adopting you both." The girl's eyes widened. "Seriously? Completely serious? Kevin already considers you part of the family, and Jonathan hesitated. "I owe you so much. More than I could repay in several lifetimes." Sophia frowned. "It's not because of guilt, right? Because we don't want to be adopted out of guilt." Jonathan smiled. "In the beginning, maybe it was. But now it's because I've learned to love you. And because I want to do what's right, not out of obligation, but because it's what my heart desires." Sophia studied his face for a long moment, as if looking for any sign of falsehood. Finally, she nodded. "I think Miguel would be happy. He's never had a real father. And you?" The girl shrugged, but there was a glimmer in her eyes. "I think I can get used to having a fixed roof over my head." 3 years passed. The New Dawn Foundation, created by Jonathan with what remained of his fortune, had grown beyond expectations. What began as a project to rebuild Hope Village had expanded to 5 different communities, benefiting more than 2,000 families. Kevin, now 15, had transformed into a confident and engaged young man. The trauma had left scars, but had also forged in him a deep understanding of privilege and responsibility. He had become a teenage spokesperson for the foundation. Miguel, at 9 years old, was a vibrant and healthy boy, passionate about soccer and math. Sophia, at 13, was increasingly revealing the natural leadership that Jonathan had always seen in her. At school, she excelled not only academically, but also in social projects that she herself proposed. "You should see Sophia talking to those kids," Kevin commented during dinner. "It's like she was born to do it." Jonathan smiled. "Some people have a natural gift for leading and inspiring. Your sister is one of them." Sophia blushed slightly upon hearing "your sister." Even after 3 years, the term still moved her. "I'm just trying to give back what I've received," she replied simply. The family's peace, however, would be shaken by unexpected challenges. Michael, from prison, still exerted influence through old allies. Christopher Matthews, his main associate who had escaped the investigations, began to attack the New Dawn Foundation's projects. When the foundation tried to defend the Flower Garden community from an illegal eviction orchestrated by Matthews, Jonathan realized that the battle was far from over. "Maybe we should retreat temporarily," suggested Peter Harrison, a lawyer and longtime friend. "These men are dangerous and have a lot to lose if you're successful." "Retreating is exactly what they expect," Jonathan replied. "It was retreating in the face of obstacles that allowed corruption to take root. I won't make the same mistake twice." The night before the scheduled eviction, the entire family mobilized. Kevin organized volunteers to document everything. Sophia prepared a first aid team. Miguel, even at his young age, used his technology skills to coordinate communications. At 5 in the morning, the Flower Garden had been transformed into a peaceful fortress. Hundreds of people formed a human chain around the community. Journalists from all the major news outlets occupied strategic positions. The arrival of the bulldozers and the police riot squad was met not with violence, but with unity. Men, women, children, the elderly, all holding hands, singing. Jonathan positioned himself on the front line, along with community leaders. Beside him, Kevin, Sophia, and Miguel stood firm, their young faces contrasting with the seriousness of the moment. When the court officer advanced with the warrant in hand, Jonathan stepped forward. "Before you attempt to execute this warrant," he spoke loudly for all to hear, "I suggest you verify its legality. We have documentary evidence that the alleged ownership was forged with falsified documents." The officer hesitated, looking at the police apparatus behind him, then at the peaceful crowd, and finally at the cameras recording everything. "This will have to be reviewed by the judge," he replied, clearly uncomfortable. "Excellent idea," Jonathan smiled. "And in the meantime, you might want to alert the magistrate that we have just filed a formal complaint against him with the Judicial Conduct Board, with evidence of his financial connection to Christopher Matthews' business group." After a brief consultation, the officer announced, "The operation is suspended until further judicial order." An explosion of joy swept through the community. Hugs, tears, applause. It was a temporary but significant victory. "It worked," Miguel exclaimed, euphoric. "We won!" "It was just the first battle," Jonathan warned, although he was smiling too. "They'll be back with a new strategy." Sophia watched the scene with a thoughtful look. "The most important thing is that we showed that it's possible to resist, that we're not alone." Kevin nodded. "Like you once said, the real power isn't in money, but in people united by a just cause." Jonathan felt his chest swell with pride as he saw his 3 children, the biological and the adopted, united not only by family ties, but by shared values. Values that he himself had taken almost a lifetime to discover. 5 years had passed since that visit to Hope Village. The New Dawn Foundation had become a national benchmark in social housing and education programs. What began as a project of personal redemption had transformed into a movement that inspired change throughout the country. Kevin, now 20, was studying economics at university. determined to create business models that reconciled profit and social impact. Sophia, at 18, had recently been accepted into medical school, her determination to become a pediatrician fueled by memories of her sick brother. Miguel, at 14, excelled in science Olympiads and dreamed of developing affordable treatments for respiratory diseases. "The test results are in," announced Sophia, entering the room with an envelope. "Miguel is completely cured." It was the news they had been waiting for years. Miguel had bravely fought the chronic lung disease, and the experimental treatment had finally proven its effectiveness. The happiness, however, would be interrupted. A letter arrived, sent from the federal prison where Michael was serving his sentence. It was the first time he had written directly to Jonathan. "Brother, I hope you're satisfied with your little victory. You managed to postpone the inevitable once again, but you know what they say about revenge, right? It's a dish best served cold. You think you've built a new life, a new family, a new purpose, but it's all a house of cards, Jonathan, and the tide is rising. Michael." Jonathan reread the letter several times, feeling a chill down his spine. These weren't just empty threats from a bitter man. There was something more, a disturbing confidence, as if Michael knew something he didn't. That night, he shared the letter during dinner. Kevin was visibly disturbed, but maintained his composure. Miguel immediately began talking about security systems that could be installed. Sophia, however, remained strangely silent. "What is it, Sophia?" Jonathan asked finally. "You're very quiet." "I'm thinking about what he said about blood and family," she replied slowly. "It bothers me, like he was insinuating something." In the following weeks, life went on. The foundation expanded its projects to a new community. Kevin presented his thesis. Sophia excelled in her medical research program. Miguel won a national science Olympiad. Until, on a sunny Sunday, the past returned in an unexpected way. The family had just returned from a rare day of leisure in the park when they found a visitor waiting on the porch of the house. An elegant woman of approximately 50 years old. "Beatrice Matthews," she introduced herself. "Wife of Christopher Matthews, or ex-wife, to be more precise." "What do you want, Ms. Matthews?" Jonathan asked, keeping his voice controlled. "A conversation," she replied simply, "about my ex-husband, about your brother, and about a plan you should know about." In the living room, Beatrice got straight to the point. "I'm here because I believe that my ex-husband and your brother are planning something that will put your family at risk." "What exactly are they planning?" "The complete destruction of the New Dawn Foundation. And," she paused, "the separation of your family." Sophia frowned. "Separation? What does that mean?" "It means, dear, that they've discovered something about your origins that they intend to use as a weapon," Beatrice replied, addressing Sophia. "Something that your adoptive father is apparently unaware of. Your brother has an obsession with revenge, Mr. Mendonca. He and Christopher hired investigators to dig into her and her brother's past, and they found something interesting." "What kind of thing?" asked Sophia. "About your biological father," Beatrice replied softly. "The man who abandoned your mother before your brother was born. It's relevant, Mr. Mendonca, because Sophia and Miguel's biological father isn't just any nobody." Beatrice paused for dramatic effect. "According to the investigators, there's strong evidence that their father is Hector Ramirez." The name landed like a bomb in the room. Hector Ramirez was a notorious drug lord who had controlled the drug trade in several barrios of Los Angeles for years. A man known for his brutality. "That's absurd," Sophia reacted immediately. "My mother would never get involved with someone like that. They intend to forge evidence that you always knew and deliberately concealed the information. That your entire transformation was just a facade to launder drug money through the foundation." "Why are you telling us this?" Jonathan asked. "What's your angle?" "As I said, self-interest. Christopher is diverting resources that rightfully belong to me in the divorce settlement. Besides, she hesitated, I have a daughter who's volunteering with the foundation without her father's knowledge. After she left, a heavy silence filled the room. Kevin and Miguel joined Sophia and Jonathan. You don't believe this, do you? Sophia asked, her voice small and insecure. Jonathan sat down beside her, taking her hands in his. Sophia, listen to me carefully. It doesn't matter who your biological father was. It doesn't change who you are. It doesn't change anything between us. But what if it's true? Tears began to form in the young woman's eyes. What if we carry the blood of a monster? Kevin approached. Then it just makes your choices even more admirable. Look at you two. Two of the most compassionate and ethical people I know. That comes from character, not blood. Miguel, who had remained strangely calm, finally spoke up. We need to find out the truth. We can't defend ourselves based on assumptions. We'll handle this methodically, Jonathan decided. First, we'll check the contents of the flash drive with extreme caution. Then we'll discreetly investigate these allegations about Hector Ramirez. At the same time, we'll reinforce the Foundation's security and our own. What if it's true? Sophia insisted, the vulnerability evident in her trembling voice. Jonathan held her hands firmly. Then we face it together, with honesty and transparency, like we've faced every challenge. We won't allow Rodrigo or Christopher to turn part of your history into a weapon against you or against our family. The investigation revealed a complex truth. The contents of the flash drive proved to be genuine. Rodrigo and Christopher really were plotting to destroy the Foundation's reputation and separate the family, using the alleged kinship with Hector Ramirez as a weapon. As for the truth about Sophia and Miguel's biological father, the evidence was inconclusive. There were records that Martha Ribeiro had worked briefly as a waitress in a restaurant frequented by Ramirez at the relevant time. Some witnesses mentioned a relationship, others vehemently denied it. We'll never know for sure, Jonathan commented, reviewing the reports with the family. Not without a DNA test, and Ramirez was cremated after his death. Maybe it's better that way, Sophia replied thoughtfully. The uncertainty allows us to choose what to believe. And what do you choose to believe? Kevin asked gently. Sophia reflected for a moment. I choose to believe that our mother saw something good in him, whoever he was. And I choose to believe that we are more than our DNA. What about Rodrigo and Christopher? Miguel asked. How do we stop them from using this against us? By anticipating them, Jonathan replied, a plan already forming in his mind. They expect to catch us off guard, forcing us into a defensive position. What if, instead, we take the initiative? The large annual conference on sustainable social development attracted authorities, journalists, and representatives from NGOs from all over the country. Jonathan had chosen this moment strategically. If Rodrigo and Christopher intended to use the past as a weapon, he would transform that same past into a fortress. The auditorium was packed when Jonathan took the stage. Kevin, Sophia, and Miguel occupied the front row, tense but determined. Good afternoon, everyone, Jonathan began, his calm voice masking the inner turmoil. Today, I'll not only talk about the future we intend to build, but also about the past that brought us here, about choices, consequences, and above all, about transformation. With a gesture, he invited Kevin, Sophia, and Miguel to come to the stage. The three young people joined him, forming a powerful image of family unity. My biological son, Kevin, who survived an attempted murder orchestrated by his own uncle to protect corporate secrets. A young man who could have chosen resentment, but chose compassion. And my adopted children, Sophia and Miguel Ribeiro Mendonca. Children who lost everything, home, security, even their mother, because of actions of the company that I headed. Children who, by an irony of fate, ended up saving not only my son's life, but my own soul. Recently, Jonathan continued, we discovered that certain people are investigating Sofia and Miguel's past, seeking information about their biological father, who abandoned the family before Miguel was born, seeking, more specifically, connections with the late Hector Ramirez. A murmur ran through the auditorium. The name of the notorious criminal had exactly the impact that Jonathan expected. To those people, I say, you can stop looking, because true fatherhood isn't defined by DNA, but by daily choices. Because regardless of who may have contributed biologically to the existence of these extraordinary young people, I am their father, by choice, by love, by commitment. Jonathan looked directly at the cameras broadcasting the event. To those who think of using the past as a weapon against us, I remind you that there is no shame in our origins, only in the choices we make with what we're given. Sofia and Miguel Ribeiro Mendonca are two exceptional young people who dedicate their lives to fixing the mistakes that people like me have made, who transform their own pain into compassion for others. If that isn't nobility of character, I don't know what is. We will not allow conspiracies born of resentment and revenge to threaten the vital work that this foundation does. We will not hide behind secrets or half-truths. Our strength comes precisely from the transparency and integrity that we have painstakingly rebuilt over these years. This is my family, imperfect, scarred, formed by the unlikely meeting of lives that should never have crossed paths. A family built not on blood ties, but on conscious choices of love and responsibility. The auditorium exploded in applause. The press, who had come expecting announcements about new projects, found a much more powerful story, that of a family facing its past with dignity and transparency. The following months proved that Jonathan's strategy had been correct. The controlled revelations about Rodrigo and Christopher's investigations and the possible connection to Ramirez were quickly absorbed by the public and the media, transforming into a story of overcoming adversity instead of scandal. When Christopher Matthews finally tried to leak evidence about Ramirez's alleged paternity, the news fell flat. It was something the family itself had already addressed openly. On the 10th anniversary of the New Dawn Foundation, Jonathan watched with satisfaction the tangible results of a decade of hard work. 5 communities completely transformed, more than 10,000 families benefiting from decent housing, schools, health clinics, community centers, a new model of social development that was beginning to be replicated in other states. But his greatest pride continued to be his children. Kevin, with a degree in economics, led an innovative microcredit department. Sophia, finishing her residency in pediatrics, divided her time between the university hospital and a mobile clinic that served children in remote areas. Miguel, entering university to study environmental engineering, had already patented 2 low-cost water purification systems. "What are you thinking about, Dad?" Sophia asked, approaching Jonathan, who was watching the Foundation's anniversary celebration from a quieter corner. "About how proud I am," he replied sincerely. "Of you, of your brothers, of everything we've built together." Sophia smiled, that luminous smile that always warmed Jonathan's heart. "You know what I've been thinking about lately," she commented. "About how happy my mother would be to see how everything has turned out. She always believed that justice would come, even if it took a long time." "Your mother was an extraordinary woman," Jonathan replied. "I see a lot of her in you." Sophia was silent for a moment, contemplative. "You know, for years I wondered what she would say about me being a Mendonca, about being the daughter of the man whose actions contributed to her death." "And what do you think she would say?" Jonathan asked softly. "I think she would say that true forgiveness isn't forgetting the past, but building a better future from it. That sometimes the deepest wounds are the ones that teach us the most important lessons." Sophia looked at the hall, where Miguel was chatting animatedly with a group of young volunteers, and Kevin was presenting the microcredit program to potential investors. I think she would see that we formed a real family, not despite the past, but through it. Jonathan felt tears welling up. Even after all these years, Sophia's wisdom surprised him. A soft commotion caught their attention. A small stage had been set up in the center of the hall. Kevin and Miguel were gesturing, calling them. "I think they're waiting for us," Jonathan commented, offering his arm to Sophia. On the stage, Kevin took the microphone. "Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Mendonca Ribeiro family and the entire New Dawn Foundation team, we thank you for your presence at this special celebration." He paused, smiling at his father and sister who were approaching. "Today, we celebrate not only a decade of work, but a journey of personal and collective transformation." Miguel continued, 10 years ago, our family was born out of the most unlikely circumstances. A businessman who had lost his moral compass, a child on the brink of death, and 2 street orphans who had lost everything, including hope. Sophia joined her brothers, accepting the microphone. "Today, we are here to announce the next chapter in this story. The New Dawn Foundation is expanding its reach to 5 other states, with programs specifically developed for communities in situations of extreme vulnerability." Kevin resumed, "And to lead this expansion, we want to announce the official transition of the Foundation's presidency. After 10 years of inspiring leadership, our father, Jonathan Mendonca, will pass the baton to a new board of directors." The audience applauded as Jonathan stepped onto the stage, visibly moved. "This board," Miguel continued, "will be led by the 3 of us, representing not only the continuity of our father's work, but also the promise of new perspectives and innovative approaches." Jonathan accepted the microphone, struggling to control his emotion. "When I started this journey, I was seeking redemption. I was seeking to fix what I had broken, to repay moral debts that I had accumulated during years of ethical blindness. What I found, however, was much more than that." He looked at his 3 children, now conscious and committed adults. "I found a new definition of wealth, a fortune that isn't measured in bank accounts or properties, but in transformed lives, in strengthened communities, in renewed hope." Jonathan paused, looking at the attentive faces that were watching him. "But the greatest wealth, the true fortune of the impossible, was these 3 extraordinary young people who taught me the real meaning of success, who showed me that even the most serious mistakes can be the foundation for something new and deeply meaningful, who gave me a second chance not only to do good, but to be good." Our journey began with a child who believed in miracles when everyone around her had given up. Today, I realized that the real miracle wasn't my son's awakening from his coma, although that was extraordinary. The real miracle was the awakening of my own humanity, the recognition that our true fortune lies not in what we possess, but in what we share, not in the power we wield over others, but in the good we do together. Jonathan embraced his 3 children, forming a circle of intertwined arms that symbolized the unlikely but unwavering union of that family. The empire I built and lost was nothing compared to the legacy that these young people will continue to build. Because in the end, the real miracles don't come from money or power, but from faith, compassion, and the courage to change.